Here is Harry Anton talking about principally the complete drop-off of what had been a pretty strong Trump demographic, which is young people, and yet young people feel completely betrayed by Trump. Here he is on CNN.
As you know, Donald Trump put in the best performance for a Republican presidential candidate among young voters since George W. Bush did back in the early 2000s. And, you know, he started off his term, his net approval rating among voters under the age of 30 at plus 10 points. Hey, that's pretty gosh darn good. But you come over now, according to CBS News YouGov, this isn't falling into the water. This isn't going underseas. This is going into a deep, dark, black hole. Look at that, minus 46 points. That is a shift on the net approval of 56 points in the wrong direction since February. My goodness gracious, you know I love looking at these swings, looking at how the electorate changes. You rarely ever see swings.
We look at a lot of polls. We almost never see drops this big, this quickly.
Yeah.
Any sense of why? What issues may be driving it?
You know, look, we've been talking about it. You were talking about it last segment with Mr. Matt Egan. It's the economy, stupid. I mean, just take a look here. Age 18 to 29 on Trump and the economy. Back in October of 2024, who did those under the age of 30 trust? Harris or Trump? It was Trump by 10 points, according to the Marquette University Law School poll. Look at where his net approval rating is now on the economy. Minus 52 points. Very similar to what we saw in the CBS News YouGov poll in terms of his overall drop in support on the net approval rating. And this minus 52, it's just stunning.
I mean, that was a more restrained version of how Harry expressed himself, but you could see what I meant. I think my description of him in the preface was quite vindicated. In any event, and look, I have no problem with it. I think it's important to be expressive and not be boring on television. That's one of their main problems, is they're also kind of pent up that nobody wants to watch them. They're also constrained to what they can say. In any event, enough of him. If you were to look back at the first Trump presidency, it was drowned in all kinds of distractions and scandals, much of which, if not most of which, was the fault of the media that was doing everything to sabotage him and all of its allies in the establishment. You can't say that about the Trump first year. Think about what the Trump first year has entailed. The policies, the priorities, what Trump talks about. How much of that has been about the economy? How much of that has been about affordability? How much of that has been about the things young Americans are repeatedly saying make them so concerned and anxious about their future? The inability to buy a home, the inability to start a family, healthcare, that's been basically absent. Trump started out bombing Yemen, got a ceasefire deal in Israel that unraveled, flew to Israel, met with Netanyahu a bunch of times. That was a big factor, just constantly focusing on Israel's war in Gaza, justifying it, supporting it, failing to get that war in Ukraine ended, which I think Trump did himself a disservice by promising to do in 48 hours, even if that was hyperbole, 24 hours. It's been 10 months, he hasn't gotten it done, even though I do think he, as I said, deserves credit for his efforts. The Epstein files, which isn't just a distraction, but is such an embarrassment on so many levels for the Trump administration, even if, a lot of Trump supporters went from, this is the biggest issue in the world, the Biden administration is protecting the worst predatory ring on the planet, to, this doesn't matter at all. It's, people understand that was Trump completely abandoning his promise once he saw what those files were. Now we've been talking about Venezuela and bombing boats, and meanwhile people just are struggling in the economy, and they feel like they're being ignored again, which is what drove Trump's strength in the first place. And there are a lot of people in Trump world now starting to realize that, but Trump himself seems resistant. They've been trying to get him to talk about affordability. That was the word Zohran Mamdani used every day, over and over, from the start, to define his political campaign that ended up being remarkably successful no matter what you think of him. And the reason he did that was because he went on the street. I've shown you this video many times. After the 2024 election, instead of screaming, America is full of racists and America is full of sexists and that's why they didn't vote for Kamala, he went into the working class neighborhoods, the multiracial working class neighborhoods in New York that most shifted from Democrats to Trump, and there were big shifts in New York City, in non-white working class communities, immigrant communities, to Donald Trump, and he asked why, and they said all economic issues. Some of it was like, what, we're sending all this money to Israel and Ukraine while our communities fall apart. Some of it was immigration, but like, why do we give immigrants, why do we pay for illegal immigrants to have free hotels while we can barely afford houses and housing for our families? And a lot of it was, we just can't afford to live here anymore. We can't afford the rent. We can't afford transportation. We can't have health care for our kids, like basic concerns. And he listened to all that, and he realized the way to win an election was by addressing people's concerns, and their concerns were affordability. And that became his sole campaign theme, basically. And they're trying to get Trump to talk about those issues now because of these polling numbers. Now, Trump doesn't care in a sense because doesn't have to run again, but if the Democrats take over the House in 2026, it would be very hard, but certainly possible, or the Senate, which is less likely, but depending on how bad things get, also possible, Trump's in a lot of trouble. He could be impeached again. Certainly his agenda would be dead. Nothing but investigations. And so they're trying to get Trump to stop talking about Venezuela and Netanyahu and the military and tariffs, and start talking about affordability, but Trump doesn't seem very persuaded. Here he is at the White House when asked about this.
You know, there's this fake narrative that the Democrats talk about, affordability. They just say the word. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. They just say it. Affordability. The word affordability is a con job by the Democrats. They say affordable. I watched the other day where some very low IQ congresswoman talked about affordability. She had no idea. But the word affordability is a Democrat scam. They say it, and then they go into the next subject.
I mean, in one sense, he's not wrong about that, in the sense that the Democrats don't particularly have a very clear agenda about affordability, which is why so many Americans hated Biden and Harris and felt like they were ignoring their interests and gambled on Trump with a change. But I don't think it's a very good, smart strategy to go around talking about, this affordability crap totally bores me. It's nothing. It's a Democratic hoax. Because that word is a very understandable word. It's very central to people's lives. There's Wall Street Journal reporting from the weekend on what the Trump White House is doing and the kind of borderline panic they're experiencing over these polling numbers, and what they understand needs to be the overwhelming focus not on foreign wars, not on insulting Europe, not on the Epstein files, not on whatever, but on the things that people voted for Trump to do. Here's what it says. The headline is, Trump's top advisors wage campaign to shift his focus to high prices. Quote, just before President Trump left the White House for Thanksgiving, top aides met with him in his private dining room, to discuss inflation and the economy in hopes he would calibrate his message on affordability. In another meeting last month, this time in the Oval Office, aides presented Trump with surveys from one of the president's own pollsters detailing voters' concerns about the cost of living. His team has begun showing him social media posts that illustrate how Americans view the economy. Top aides have taken turns talking to their boss about his economic messaging and the need to emphasize what voters are feeling. Almost every senior White House official is involved in the effort. It is part of an across the White House bid to change Trump's messaging on the economy, as many advisors worry that voters' concerns about high prices are dragging down his presidency and hurting Republicans. In conversations in recent weeks, Trump advisors have encouraged the president to talk more about what the administration is doing to increase wages, lower the cost of housing, and reduce inflation, the people said. So far, Trump has largely avoided any, quote, I feel your pain messaging, telling aides that the economy is strong, and he dismissed Washington's focus on affordability as a trap set by Democrats. In many of the private conversations, the people said Trump argued Biden was responsible for inflation, not him. Now, this was, in my view, the most toxic, fatal, and obvious mistake Democrats and their media messengers made. Polling throughout 2023 and 2024 kept showing that people viewed the economics, the economy and their financial situation as horrible, as frightening, as unraveling. And rather than admit that or address it, the leading lights of the liberal, partisan, Democratic messaging world, like people on MSNBC and CNN, and in the White House kept saying, no, the problem's not the economy. The economy's outstanding. It's a lie. These people are too stupid to understand how great the economy is for them. Look at the stock market. Look at this. Look at that. The problem is the messaging. The problem is these people don't understand all we've done for them. That's the only problem. But the economy's doing great. The economy's not doing badly. And people who think the economy's doing badly because they can't pay their bills don't want to hear how great the economy is. And Trump is somebody who is a natural salesman, a pitchman. He loves to talk about how he presides over the greatest economy in the world. And in some metrics, maybe that's true. There were some metrics in the Biden administration that's true. But if people don't feel it in their lives, it doesn't matter. And this seems to be the trap Trump is falling into, which is, no, my economy is great. And the more he says that, the less people feel like they understand, and more importantly, are working on the things that they feel like plaguing their lives. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.